Hi, and welcome to Her Time. We are coming back together today to talk about the phases of intimacy. And so I welcome you. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, guess what? We normally don't put a timestamp on any of our recordings, but if you notice, we're all wearing some type of hue that is connected to red. And the reason for that is that this is a recording that we specifically wanted to put together for all of you connected to Valentine's Day. So it is February if you are watching us, not that you're limited to watching us on February 14th, but here we are. It's love season, and we wanted to make sure that we addressed a topic that was connected to that. So welcome to Her Time. And let me start off by reminding everybody of our email, hertime4talk@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram as well as Facebook. We have accounts that you can just look or search for under Her Time, 4 Talk, and you'll find us there as we post our new episodes. So welcome again. I'm going to start with me. My name is Daisy. So welcome to Her Time, and have my friends introduce themselves before I go on with the topic at hand.
Hello, I'm Jeanette.
I'm Regina.
And I'm Rosie.
Welcome, ladies. It's so good to see you. It's always fun to come together and to talk about different things. So thank you for being for joining us today as well. I know we're all excited. We have prepared around questions and conversations regarding this topic, but it is, as I said before, it's called Phases of Intimacy. And I wanted to acknowledge a couple of things. One of them is that when we mention intimacy, we really, so many of us think about a sexual relationship that we have. So for us, for example, for most of us on this call, it's connected to marriage, right? And so we think about the sexual intimacy between two people who are married. And it's not limited to that. Intimacy is much broader than that. So we want to make sure that we also touch on that or those facets of what intimacy is. But then the other thing about intimacy is that we need to remember that relationships, just as we do, we as human beings, we go through a life cycle, we go through a developmental cycle, and so do relationships. And so in the life cycle of a relationship, intimacy can fluctuate. It can look different at different times. The level of intimacy or the type of intimacy that a newlywed couple might go through is different than if you've been married, a few decades, if you've been married for a long time. Just as a human being's life, right? They experience intimacy differently at different ages in life. So definitions might change and get a little broader. So intimacy within the marriage is not something that we talk about a lot. It's very private. And as believers, as women of faith, we want to be discretionary, we want to be private, and it's that's between me, my husband, and God. He gets to be in that as well. But we wanted to talk a bit about it. We're not necessarily going to tackle practices of intimacy, but we are going to talk about the mindset and just kind of the emotional space that intimacy takes up in our relationship. So I have a few questions, and I'm actually going to start with Reg. Reg, as the one in this grouping who is not married at this point in your life, right? Not that we've given up on that ever happening again, but as the one who's not married at this point, I actually wanted to start with you and ask you, when you look at the marriages, we'll start with marriages of the three of us, my marriage, Jeanette's, Rosaline's marriage, what are some of the impressions when under the umbrella of intimacy? what are the impressions of our marriages to you? What do you see?
Well, I mean, we've been friends for over 20 years. And I mean, all the conversations we've had, all the, sitting around the table, drinking coffee, eating bread, pastries, or even one-on-one with each of you, I consider your marriage as perfect because you've never come to me, maybe because I'm not married, but you've never, acknowledged that there's been any problems in your marriages. Like all of you have like these perfect marriages, these perfect guys, like you go to sleep happy and you wake up happy, and like you never let me know that there's any issues, and that's one of the things we really don't talk about. And maybe because you're protecting me from like not wanting to like talk to your husbands or whatever, but I love your husbands. I honestly believe, like, I don't want to get married unless I have a marriage like yours. That's why it's taken me so long to find somebody, because I don't want to have a marriage unless it's like yours. You've been amazing examples to me, but honestly, it's because I feel like we just don't talk about those little nuances that you have to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. So who wants to answer that? Who wants to respond to it? Because yeah, I hear that and I think perfect. Oh my goodness,
Because perfect, right?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah. So who wants to respond to that?
Well, we're far from being perfect. I'm sure, that you have this picture of us, but it's far from perfect. We've had our ups and downs. We've had our moments where we were like at the brink, of divorce. It's just, not perfection, even though I would like it to be perfect, right? And this marriage takes work, as we all know. The fact that we both love Jesus, we are striving, right, to live out this life called marriage together and find that balance in our marriage, right? But yeah, we're not perfect.
Yeah. Jeanette, are you and Papo perfect?
Absolutely.
I knew it. I knew it.
Absolutely.
One of us had to be, yeah.
Well, you know what? Papo is an amazing guy and wonderful, and I'm blessed. And the way I look at it, I think, is that he's perfect for me. Not a perfect person by any means, and I'm not perfect, and our marriage is not perfect at all by any means. But like, I think we've been married 20 years, and I think that going on 21 actually pretty soon. I think that over the years, it wasn't about, oh, our marriage is perfect. I think it's just, are we thriving? Are we growing? Are we communicating? So first of all, just to answer the question, absolutely not perfect by any means. But
still, you're not giving me any dirt. Still, you're not telling me like,
well,
what's
listen,
wrong? No,
1 year after not even a year, it was less than a year after we had gotten married and we had moved out here to Georgia, we met up in a parking lot, drove so that we could be alone, away from the kids and everything. And we talked about getting divorced. Literally.
What?
Yes. We sat there in a parking lot and said, okay, I think we made a mistake. This is not going to happen. We're different and we just have too many, blah, 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 whatever. And my husband and I, Papo and I just talked about this. Actually, it's been about a year already. We were talking about how, if we had given up at that moment, all the things that we would have missed out on, and so I'm so incredibly thankful to the Lord that both of us said, wait a minute, wait a minute, it's not perfect, but we love Jesus. Like Rosie said, we love Jesus. we serve a good God,
Yes.
and we're going to continue to fight and work and communicate and do whatever it takes to, to have that intimacy within us, because between us, because we were just, I don't know, we just, like, we weren't on the same wavelength. We just kept, like, if I said left, he said right, or left, right.
Yeah.
So, it just wasn't, but, he's, like I said, now, yes, he's perfect for me. But
Well, I'm so grateful that the both of you have said that, because that makes me think about the fact that intimacy and the facets of intimacy change. Because I'm sure in those really difficult times, those times when, we've talked about divorce, I'm sure intimacy didn't look the same as it does or has in times when everything was great and you're on cloud nine and this is the man of my life, that kind of thing. So
right before the wedding.
yeah, like the wedding, right? So those are, my husband has a thing that he says to people all the time, which I think is so appropriate. And that is when people come to him or come to us and say things like, I want a marriage like yours, we want a marriage that looks like yours. My husband will respond by saying, you want a marriage like ours today. And I hope you get that, but I pray against the journey that we've had to get here, because the journey has been really difficult. Rick and I have been married 35 years. And boy, did we come to points in that 35-year journey where we don't want to do this anymore. Life would be easier without it. And thank God we haven't, obviously, but so that, intimacy has been different. It's been, whether that is spiritual intimacy together and how we practice that, or how we practice sexual intimacy together, it's been different. So, let me broaden this a little bit, because I want to ask then, and Reg, of course, this is not specific to marriage today. So what are some elements of intimacy that are important to you that have to be part of a relationship when you think about not only a marital relationship, but relationship with your children, relationship with friends and family? What are facets or elements of intimacy that must be a part of your relationships?
Well, every time you say intimacy, it reminds me of a professor that was talking about this, I guess in Bible school or something, and he described intimacy as in to me see. So into me see, like look into me, find me on, aside from everything you see, look into me. And then so every time I think of intimacy, I think of, okay, are you the type of person that looks inward? You're not just seeing the outside, you're seeing the inside of me, like who I am, my thoughts. You want to know what I'm thinking, what my passions are, who I like to hang out with, who I don't like, the things I don't like, the things I do love, not just like the outside, like, oh, you look good, or, that's a great look for you, whatever. But no, are you looking into who I am? And that's where I find that intimacy.
Okay. And that comes via other relationships as well, obviously, is what I hear you saying. It's not limited to a specific one. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, like maybe I'm not, maybe I don't give things time, because I tend to be like, oh, no, I can't with you. So I just walk away. But, the people that are really close with me, like the people, like the three of you, you've seen my hard times, you've seen my ups, my downs, the thoughts in my head. And that's where I can trust that we have a good relationship, and I can trust. And I think the intimacy is mostly trust.
I was
I
thinking trust. I was thinking trust and respect. You like, I can't have any kind of intimate relationship with anyone if there's not a mutual respect.
mm,
Like, if I'm feeling a certain way, respect my feelings. Like, and I'll respect yours. Like, okay, you're having an off day or you're having an off moment or whatever, but I care about you. I
Right.
care about you. We had, there's intimacy when there's, to me, when there's respect, when there's trust. I trust you with how I feel. I trust you with
mm,
my heart. I trust you with what I'm thinking. I
Yeah.
trust you with my load of poop.
mm.
I trust you with my highs. I trust you with my lows. So trust and respect, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love, I
Awesome.
love, I love what Regina said. Um, that what the professor said, into me, look into me, and I'm like, wow, that's really good. Um, but like Regina and Jeanette, trust is a big factor, and the fact that we place that on each other, and just having that feeling of security that I can rely on my partner, on my friends, that I can rely on, being vulnerable, in front of them. But one of the other elements that I think is very important, aside from trust and respect, would be the feeling of being showing that we care deeply for each other, showing that no matter what, I have your back. And that for me is important in
Mhm.
intimacy, that you care about me, that you demonstrate that you show that, along with the respect and the trust.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important as well. And I think, okay, so thinking about those factors, thinking about those elements of intimacy, who do you practice intimacy with? Who are the relationship people who hold that position where you practice intimacy with them? Who is that in your
Aside
life?
from my husband, you four?
Right,
No.
right. Okay.
Well, yeah, with family, right? And those loved ones that are close and dear to your heart, where you're building those relationships,
Yeah.
and just practicing that intimacy with them. Yeah. And
Which
of course,
includes then the respect and the trust and the caring for each other. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
of course with the Lord, that goes without saying, right? But yeah,
But let's say it. Yeah.
yes, let's say it with my Lord.
Okay. How
I
about the
was
other?
thinking,
Yeah,
I
who knows me better than anyone?
Right.
I was
Jeanette?
thinking, besides, of course, all the ones Rosie mentioned, and I was thinking, I have, I've had, now, I don't know if you'll agree or disagree with me here, but I have had intimate moments with someone that I thought, wow, that was an intimate conversation. That was an intimate
Mm,
moment that I don't necessarily have an ongoing intimate
Ongoing. Yeah,
relationship with.
yeah.
So like, I remember one time being on a missions trip and, I've never seen the lady since, but we had such a deep and
mm,
intimate conversation, and she shared things with me and I shared things with her, and I prayed for her, and I gave her some scripture, and it was, to me, it was such a beautiful moment. It
mm.
Mhm,
was an intimate moment in my opinion, and
mhm.
but I don't have an intimate relationship with her. We had
Right.
an intimate
Intimate
moment,
moment. That's
Yeah.
good.
you know.
I'm glad you brought that up because there are those moments which to me are not necessarily connected to the person itself, but it's God's doing. It's
Mm,
God bringing that forward in me. And obviously in the other person, and you're talking about it in the scope of a mission trip. So,
mhm,
so I know that God is in the center of
mhm,
those. But yeah, it's definitely intimacy. It's your experience is a moment. God's for you is a lifetime change.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of sitting in what you're saying. So we practice intimacy in moments. We practice it in longevity, a marriage that has been marriage for 50 years, intimacy at different lengths in time. Obviously, we practice, intimacy with our teenagers, and they haven't been on this earth for that long, but there's an intimate element that is part of those relationships as well. So let's talk about threats to intimacy. What are some of the threats to intimacy? And I'll start with me because, I recently been part of a story of a friend losing a husband, right? And in that, and just hearing what the journey has looked like in the last 6 months. And I think, oh my goodness, the level of intimacy in those 6 months, when there's been illness, when there's a threat of loss of life, intimacy changes, in a marriage. Intimacy doesn't look the same. I think about me and my own health journey. Intimacy has had to be relooked at. Does it mean that if we in a relationship, in a marriage specifically, cannot have a physical intimacy experience, does that mean that we're not intimate anymore? So I wanted to ask what your perspectives would be on what are threats to intimacy? What can come against intimacy in relationship?
Definitely betrayal. Like if there's anything that you've done to lose my trust, it's hard for me to trust you again.
Yeah.
I don't want to trust you again.
Right.
So that's where I'm like, I think that's where I am the type that I'm like, there's nothing you can do to gain my trust. I'm done. I'm over it. And so it would definitely be betrayal for me.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a big one. Yeah.
I was going to say not feeling safe. And I don't mean like, oh, I'm scared for my life, but like, although that could be too, but I was like safe with how I was saying earlier about safe with my feelings, safe with how I, safe with what I tell you, safe with what I reveal to you, safe with being vulnerable with you. If I don't feel safe, then I'm like,
yeah, are you going to judge me? Or are you going to, like, if I tell you this, are you going to judge me? Or are you going to accept it? If I tell you this, like, these are pretty dark secrets. Are you sure you can handle this?
Right.
That's a big factor. Yep. Thank God for the power of forgiveness, right? But I think for me, like I can share, there was a moment in my marriage. We're gonna make 24 years in February of being married. And I think there was moments in our lives where I didn't feel, or within our marriage, that I didn't feel safe. Like I didn't feel cared for like I wanted to. I had some high expectations that I had to work around because, when those expectations are not met, forget it. Things crumble, right? But we got to look at the other person. And anyhow, but I think about how in my own marriage, there were moments when we felt like roommates, and where we kind of just came together and said, things we're just not getting along. We're on different wavelengths. We're not seeing eye to eye. We're arguing. We're fighting. And so the intimacy of just being with each other was not there. And we were that was a time when we were ready to be like, we're done. It feels like we're roommates. you know?
Yeah.
And even after that, like after we had our daughter, there was just that moment where with both, you know, it's not just one-sided, it's two-sided, right? A marriage takes two people.
Yeah.
And there was moments when in my own marriage, I felt like, you know, this is not going to work out. And I say, thank God for the power of forgiveness, because I feel like if God forgave me for the many things I did in my own life, why can't I forgive my husband, you know, for just not meeting my expectations or doing what I've asked, or, you know, so I just, you know, there was a threat there, but, you know, it's taken time. And I thank God for his healing hand and power and forgiveness.
Yeah. And God's grace over the whole marriage, right?
Yeah.
Because we also have to keep in mind that we're not operating on our own, right? It's not our own power. So that's important as well. Did you have something
I
else?
just wanted to add, I love what you said in the beginning of our marriage. You know, what looks like in the beginning is not the same as 20 years later. You know, you've grown, you've learned, and I love that aspect that we've been able to walk this journey and learn, and thank God we didn't give up, but we've continued. And I feel like we're at a state where, you know, God has really just worked in both of us. So
Yeah.
See,
And to that,
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
The
Go
funny
ahead.
thing is that, like, I met Rosie and Jose. Well, I knew Jose before, but I met Rosie and Jose like a couple of months after they got married.
mhm.
And then I've known Jeanette, you know, before, but I was there at her wedding. The only one I didn't know from the beginning is Daisy. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you guys never dished this out to me. I didn't know you guys were at the brink of divorce, which I know that you're not like spreading all this, you know, you don't, you know, but does that mean that like we're not intimate enough that you would tell me, or you just, it's just something you held close, like, okay, this is just for me and my husband, or, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. That sounds like a question. Fresh. Something that we need to
It is a
respond to.
question. Well,
But you know, but maybe that's another episode, right? Her time when they really talk about the intimacy of their own friendship, you know.
right.
Them.
I know. I know we have to keep this going.
So,
And I'm just like, what?
So another episode can be, what have you not told me?
exactly. And
why?
That's forthcoming to everybody. Okay. That's forthcoming. It's made it to our list.
Yeah, because I might have punched, you know, your husband's in the throat. I've been like, don't be messing with my girl.
Maybe that's why.
Very aggressive.
I wanted to recognize.
I'm not telling Reg because I like my husband.
I wanted to recognize that there are
continue.
other things. There are also other things that are threats to intimacy. And one of them, you know, which is a joyous occasion, which is the birth of a child. You know, you have a baby. And again, I'm not talking about the 6 weeks or the 8 weeks before you have sex again. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, I'm tired. I don't want to stay up and talk. I don't want to hold your hand. I don't want to watch a movie, you know.
Your
so
body feels different. There's hormones going on all crazy and
emotions. Yes, a lot of stuff is going on. So those are things that impact intimacy.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that we have an image of it being, it impacts intimacy. But all worth knowing, because, you know, those are the times when we tend to compare. We've talked about comparison of our individual selves, you know, against someone else, but we compare our marriages, we compare our relationships. Why can't I have a friendship like that? You know, I want to go travel with the person. I want to go shopping all day. I want to stay up at night and just talk. I want those types of relationships as well, or friendships as well. Not everybody has them. It doesn't mean that it's less than, that you're living in the less than, you know. Of course, relationships, you have to work on them. You have to develop them and grow them. But talk about that together, just like you would in a marriage intimacy situation, you would talk about it. I wanted to say, there are lists out there of how to, and we've named a few things already with respect and trust and caring for each other, to get to different levels or different places of intimacy. And I wanted to say that the one that I kept coming back to, and I understand and agree with Jeanette and Roseline as they listed, but mine is knowing. It's similar to what Regina was saying, right? With knowing me better, knowing me inside, not just the outside. But intimacy can't begin, it can't be initiated without knowing, without taking the step to know, which to me means I'm going to trust God enough to identify, for him to identify those people that I want to be intimate with. But, so Celine mentioned Jesus. She mentioned Christ, right? It starts with knowing. That's how we get intimate with God. We're introduced to God. We're introduced to a loving God, a sacrificing God, a God who gives up his life for us. And that's how intimacy begins with all of us, whether it is that relationship with God or that relationship with each other. And I just wanted to note that in my favorite, that has become a favorite scripture of mine has been John 17, where Jesus is praying. Because who better to learn from, right? About intimacy, about anything as disciples of Jesus. And it's listening to his prayer. And one of the things that he says, there are two that I'm going to share, but one of the things that he says, which I think is specifically connected or directly connected to intimacy, is in 17:3. Jesus is praying and he says, "And this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, who you have sent." This is Jesus talking. And Jesus says the same thing. Intimacy begins with knowing, that they may know you. That's all that Jesus is praying. He said that they may know you. And then further in verse 21, he says, "And that they may all be one," which means that in order for us to live an intimate life, walk an intimacy journey, we're going to have to know each other. We're going to have to know God so that we can be one. It's what Regina was saying. It's let's know more. Let's know the inside of each other and realize that the only way to be intimate is to know each other at those deep levels, not the superficial.
Yeah, and it's like an onion, like you read the Bible once, like, oh wow, you read the Bible the next year and you read the same verse and you're like, I didn't read that last year, or I didn't realize that last year. Same thing with each other. Like, I'm sure with your husbands, like every day you learn something new, and it's like an onion, like you peel back the layers and, you just start getting down deeper. And the more you find it, the stronger it gets, So.
And as you peel an onion, you cry.
Yeah.
I peel onions and I cry. And sometimes those are happy tears and sometimes they're not happy tears. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to eat the onion at the end of it. So
Great analogy.
We're going to leave it at that philosophical, spiritual place that, intimacy is an onion. Start peeling. The top of it is easy, but then the layers actually get tighter and tighter as you get into the onion.
And stronger and stronger.
But stay with it. Yeah, and it tastes great. So
or a parfait.
I was about to say parfait instead.
So ladies, thank you. This has been fun, but it's been deep as well. And I really appreciate the conversation. I feel like we're at a new level of intimacy ourselves, and I'm always grateful for that. So I love you each. Those of you who are viewing, again, happy Valentine's Day. By the
Yes.
time you view this, that is what we will be celebrating. And build on your intimacy. It's worth it. Be
Yes.
blessed. Bye-bye.
Bye.